Okay, welcome back to 3D Interactive Learning Technologies. We're just here looking at some refrigeration processes. So if you remember from previous videos, we went through recovery of refrigerant. So we have now recovered all the refrigerant out of our system. The system is empty. And again, you can check out some of our other videos like our brazing videos and so on. We've carried out some sort of repair. So whatever the type of repair is needed to carry out, and it forced us to have to remove the refrigerant. We've removed the refrigerant, we've carried out the repair that was required. It could have been as simple as just replacing this pressure switch, for example, this dual pressure switch, because remember, we couldn't, with the capillary line where it's located, we couldn't change that capillary or open that capillary without losing refrigerant. So this capillary line, if it needed to be replaced, or if the pressure switch needed to be replaced, then that would force us to have to recover all the refrigerant, or some other repair if we had to do some repair on the compressor side of things, on the discharge side, or if we had to do some repairs with the condenser, like weld up a burst pipe on the condenser. So we had to do some kind of repairs with the system that forced us to remove the refrigerant. The reason why I am labouring on repairs that force us to remove refrigerant is because we all know that we have the capacity, again, by going back to the video that explained how our access service valve works, we have the capacity of fully front seating this valve, and by fully front seating the valve, we can store all the refrigerant in the liquid receiver, in the liquid pipe as far as the condenser, in the condenser, and as far as the discharge side of the compressor. That means that once we pump the refrigerant down to the high side of the system, we will be able to work on changing our filter dryer, changing our sight glass, changing our solenoid or opening our solenoid, taking our evaporator away and putting a new one in place, for example, carrying out any kind of remedial work that's needed, and the thermostatic expansion valve that's located inside in this actual evaporator as well, we could take that apart. We can change the orifice on it, we can change out the valve and so on. So there are occasions when all that is necessary is to carry out a pump down the refrigerant into the high side of the system. By pumping the refrigerant into the high side of the system, this is only possible where you have a liquid receiver. By pumping down the refrigerant into the high side of the system, we are then able to carry out whatever remedial repairs we need. But if we're in a scenario whereby we have to change this high side capillary, for example, then pumping down will not help us to prevent refrigerant loss as soon as we disconnect this capillary line. Therefore, we must recover all the refrigerant. If we needed to carry out repairs on the condenser, again, we need to recover refrigerant. In this particular scenario, because there's no isolating valve on the discharge side of the compressor, if we needed to remove this compressor or replace this compressor, again, recovery is required. So there are definitive times when we must recover refrigerant to carry out repairs, and there are occasions when we can carry out a pump down sequence to carry out repairs. So we've recovered our refrigerant, we've carried out our repairs. The next thing we must do under the regulations, under F-gas regulations, we must make sure that this system is leak tight. In other words, there is no possible way of refrigerant, once we charge this up with refrigerant, there's no possible way of refrigerant escaping to the atmosphere. The only way you can check a system that is leak tight, or to ensure and satisfy your system is leak tight, is by putting pressure into it. We cannot put refrigerant into it if we are unsure whether or not the system is leak tight. So in other words, you cannot add refrigerant to a refrigeration system, heat pump or otherwise, knowing that there's a leak in it. That's against the law. So the first thing you must do as a competent engineer is you must satisfy yourself that this system is leak tight based on the work that you carried out or the remedial repairs that you carried out. So you are going to hand this system back over to the customer in the knowledge that that system is a leak tight system and it is not going to leak anytime soon because of work that you carried out. The only reason why that system could leak in the future is because of a human error, somebody else doing something wrong. Okay, so refrigerant is either global warming potential or ozone depletion potential. Since 2010, most of the ozone or all of the ozone depletion potential refrigerant is now gone. So CFC and HCFC refrigerant is no longer existent on the market. So what we're left with is HFC refrigerant, which is the global warming refrigerant. So we need to be able to pressure test this system, and what we use in refrigeration terms is we use oxygen-free nitrogen. So you can see on this bottle here, it's labeled as nitrogen, compressed nitrogen, okay? What I would like to see, I know it has a black cap, what I would like to see in addition to this actual bottle, this label, is I'd like to see a label that says oxygen-free nitrogen. It's very important that we remember the word oxygen free. So please check with your supplier that the nitrogen bottle that you are buying is oxygen free nitrogen. The reason why is because we do not want to introduce oxygen to a refrigeration system. Oxygen and the oil that's contained within the compressor, they are a catalyst to cause an explosion. So if the two meet together, if you introduce oxygen, pure oxygen into this system, as soon as it hits the oil, you will have an explosion. So please check, please make sure that you check with your supplier and you check the labels of your bottles. So you go by color as well as labels, but check with the labels of your bottles that the system is oxygen free nitrogen. If we note, the cap here is black, but the bottle is grey, even though it's oxygen free nitrogen. If I bring you over to this one here, the bottle is yellow, but the cap is black. Okay, so it's still black, and we still have our label, which is nitrogen. It says nitrogen in it. If I bring you over to our oxygen bottle, so again, this is where we would have a scenario. If I can bring you over here.
Bring it over here. Now I am rolling.
Okay, so just bring you over here. It's the same. Remember, we did it on the brazen video. We showed you. Here's a grey bottle. It's got a white cap and it's actually labelled oxygen. So you can see where the label itself says oxygen CO2. The label up here, well, there's no label here. So basically this is showing you that it's an oxygen bottle. So you can see grey bottle. You can see a yellow bottle here with a kind of a burnt orange or a red cap on it, and that red cap is indicating to me that that's acetylene. So this is acetylene, this is oxygen, this is for brazing purposes. Again, I went through it in the brazing video, but I can't emphasize enough the danger. This regulator here was actually has the same thread as my nitrogen regulator, so I could quite easily put a nitrogen regulator onto this bottle and mistakenly put oxygen in if I'm not careful. So watch your labels. It's a white cap, doesn't matter about the color of the bottle, it's the white cap and it's labeled, so make sure you read the label. If you are in doubt, then go back to your supplier and ask your supplier, is it oxygen free nitrogen?
So now we're rolling.
Okay, if you're in doubt, always check the labels. If the labels are obscured or you can't read the labels, then go bring it back to the supplier, give it back to the supplier and say, listen, you want a bottle that is labeled correctly and can reassure you that it is oxygen free nitrogen. Oxygen free nitrogen is very important. Okay, so we get our service line from our manifold. We connect our service line to our nitrogen bottle, and again we have to be very careful with nitrogen. So this is my nitrogen regulator and I have it loosened as much as possible, so basically you're going to have it anti-clockwise. You've got to make sure that when we go and open this bottle we don't have a surge of pressure going through. There could be it's fairly on a new bottle, it could be up as far as 200 bar pressure in this particular bottle. So we go and we open our bottle. It's now safe to do so. Okay, so we've now opened our bottle. What we want to do now is we're going to put the nitrogen through the high side, because this gauge here will take higher pressure than the low side. So I open the valve on my high side gauge manifold. This is staying closed, but just the high side manifold is staying open. I have my solenoid energized, so any refrigerant that comes, or any nitrogen that comes in, excuse the pun, any nitrogen that comes into the high side of the system is going to come across to the low side of the system. Go back to my regulator on my nitrogen bottle, and you can see where I'm just now. I just got a pinch, so I'm now slowly, and be very careful and very slow, because you don't want to have too much pressure going in too soon inside into the bottle. Well, you can see there we're nice and slowly. I'm in no rush. You can probably hear the nitrogen going through, nice and slow. Now the other thing that you'll see, that I'll disengage it and I'm watching the needles. And the reason why I'm watching the needles, if there's a big leak in the system, those needles will go back to zero fairly quickly. So I don't want to waste a load of nitrogen. So if I was lashing in a load of nitrogen like this into the system, you would then find yourself in a scenario where it would be going out as quick as it's going in, and you'd use a bottle before you know it. I got as far as 2 bar there. You could hear the pressure switch clicking in. I'm as far as 2 bar pressure. 2 bar pressure is okay to start off with. And what we do then is we go around the system and we look and check for potential signs of leak. So again, there's we can do a separate video on how to do leak testing, but we all know at this point in time that we are checking our braze joints, and we're actually using our fingers to see if there's any signs of oil. So if there's oil on the outside of the pipe, the only place that can come from is the inside of the pipe. So again, you look at all the obvious areas and you use your fingers to see if there's any traces of oil around the actual system itself. If you can see any oil or feel any oil, then it's coming from the inside. The other thing we use is our ears, so we're listening to see if we can hear any subtle signs of hissing noises coming out. And we use our eyes, so we're looking to see our pressure here to see if that's dropping anywhere low. And then the last thing that we can use is the bubble solution. So I'll show you that in a later video, whereby you will go around with a typical bubble solution. So there are different types of manufacturers. You can buy bubble solutions. This is specifically designed for refrigerant. And again, by me spraying on the various different areas, which again we'll show you as another video, but by me spraying on the various different flared joints, brazed joints, any kind of mechanical connections that are being made, by me spraying on those, if they start to bubble up, if it starts to bubble up, that's a sign that there is nitrogen escaping out from inside the system. That's where my leak is. Okay, so 2 bar pressure, you satisfy yourself, then maybe you can bring it back up once you've checked it at 2 bar pressure. You can maybe bring it up to say about 5 bar pressure if you which again is safe. So we bring it, I'm just bringing it in. You can see it here on the actual gauge coming up. There we are at about 5 bar pressure, just above 5 bar pressure. Go through the same system again. Standing pressure, if you remember, on this was about 9.5, 10 bar. So eventually what we would do is we would actually bring this up to the standing pressure of about 9.5, 10 bar. And again, the reason for us to do that is because if it's going to leak, that's the stage where it's going to leak, is at around 10 bar. So that might subtle leak. Okay. Now, the longer I can leave this under pressure, the better it is to detect an actual leak itself. So we've got the 10 bar there on the high side, just above. Get it up to 10 bar. So what I would recommend then at this point in time is that you would leave that for as long as possible after you've gone through. So you've gone with your 10 bar, or you've gone through with your bubble solution, you've checked it with your eyes, you've checked it with your ears. So you go through the whole system and you satisfy yourself that that system is leak free. At 10 bar pressure, the longer you leave that there, the better chance you can see if there is any kind of a subtle leak. Some people on a new system would leave that overnight for 24 hours. Other people would maybe go and have a cup of tea at this stage and then come back and check it. And then if it's a new installation, you would go and do other work. So if you had drains to fit, for example, or if you had your paperwork to do, or your commissioning sheet to do, or whatever, your service docket to fill out, but go and kind of do something else before you decide that so you could maybe do the first part of your service docket, putting down the remedial work that you did and all that kind of stuff. So that's nitrogen test. We're going to leave that there for a while just to satisfy ourselves, and we'll come back next week with another video showing you then how we do the next step, which is removing the nitrogen from that system, vacuuming it out the system and charging it up. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe below and link on the other videos for filling in the information that's missing. 3D Interactive Learning Technologies.